Hi, this is Colorful Foresight where we intuitively connect from within. And it's woo woo time where we connect our woo woo into our mundane living. Hi, this is Silvia, Colorful Foresight, and here we have Angela from Dance with Angela. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks, Silvia. Thanks for having me.
So today's topic is really interesting. We're going to touch on loneliness solution, longevity of life connected to overcoming loneliness. So let's make it fun. I have 3 songs I picked for you, and then you intuitively, and including the people who's watching, how this apply to us right now at the collective. What's interesting is about we're going to use our intuition. We may use some cards. Remember, for those of you watching, it's all about you, right? It's all about you. So before we do that, can you quickly introduce what you're up to with Dance with Angela?
Sure, yeah. So one of the things that we used to do a long time ago was dance together. So I've got online dance classes for people to do in their homes with friends. It's called Dance for Joy. And this October, 26th, November 2nd and 9 in Sydney, Darlinghurst, the Authentic Living Centre, I'm doing some live in-person workshops. So if you're in Sydney, Australia, coming together, there's Sufi movement, world dance. It's a melange of all the world dance forms to find out when we're coming together as a multicultural species, how we go beyond those differences to find what's connecting our hearts. So it's a really great interactive place to explore.
I'm glad you're including all of us. So locally for you in Sydney and for us online.
Yeah.
Boulevard of Broken Dreams by Green Day. Basically, in short, in the video, he's walking alone on the boulevard. And it seems like he feels like he finds himself being wrapped up in his feeling and thought, truly, for having the emotion of loneliness. So keep that in mind. When you hear that, what comes to your mind, especially when it comes to loneliness?
Yeah. I saw the path and it wasn't a boulevard. So, when you have a path that's more like through a forest that's not paved before, there's people that have made some sort of path over time, but it's a little bit natural and wild. And what I saw was that the person is experiencing the fear of making their own life path, and then they project it into loneliness. So when you have broken dreams, you sort of think, oh, what am I here? What's this all about? Why am I even bothering? Because you start to even question your life path. But in the image I saw, it was like if they change their perception of the life path versus seeing that as a mistake or seeing it as a failure or something difficult, but it's the way they look at the life path that creates loneliness as a perception, as a concept, and makes them suffer.
Very interesting. What comes to mind is about they have that existential suffering. Like you could have so much around you. Like the boulevard tend to be very busy, but you're still feeling alone. So we're focusing on solution. Remember, we have this song. We have two more after that. So what is the loneliness solution? So let's tap in and put on our intuition hat. The first thing that comes to mind is we have to give and take. It feels like we've been more about either give, or take. For example, what comes to mind for some reason, music, and maybe we're doing music. We don't pay artists anymore. We could get things for free. So it seems like we're a taker, especially younger generation that are used to having access to everything, which is great because it opens the world, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know, sometimes may not be a connection there. I don't know if that makes sense. We have to realize that there's a give and take in everything. Even though the world's open and we have all these free things, but we have to see where are the free things coming from. Even when we walk, what comes to mind, which is interesting, but it makes sense, which I never do, but I think it's a Native American thing or indigenous thing. When they say you walk into the forest, you have to introduce yourself before you walk into the forest.
Oh my God,
I would just walk into the forest.
Yeah.
Not realizing everything is alive, everything is sentient being. So for some reason, this is part of what we're going through right now of the loneliness, because this is what's coming up. The second card, which I'm going to let you talk.
Okay.
It's the Nine of Cups and the Tower. So what comes to your mind after seeing the Six of Coins?
So the dreams, the broken dreams theme from the song, it's like that Nine of Cups is so powerful. It's like exploding your wishes to get to the next level of what you really, really desire. So we have a strong lesson for our culture at the moment where if everything's free, like even music, what is our spirit hungry for? And going back to the music, I pulled from the Crystal Ally cards, the manifestation card. This one's a bit beat up. Might be about the tower as well, like having a few broken dreams is not the worst thing in your life. We have this perception now that being brokenhearted and loneliness is terrible, but actually it could be this point where we're actually going to get the gold. In the old days, they talked about the Arthurian legend, what do they call that cup? You know, from King Arthur, the chalice and everything. I forgot the word, but it's that inner heart that is our gold, and we're still just not sure that that's real. Like in the myth of Arthur, it's this elusive cup that they're all looking for. Is it real? And it was the cup that Jesus drank from, but that was symbolic of some other mystical transformation of the self to find the gold of the self. That was all the alchemy. And this is our perception that we don't have what it takes to get to the next level. When you have a broken heart or a broken dream, you're just taking the pathetic route of saying, oh, I feel lonely, because it's easier than facing, well, actually, do I have it within me to really explode beyond my concept of myself? Because we limit ourselves with our ideas of ourselves, and we don't even have the thoughts of who we are. We don't even have the perception of who we really are. So it's easy to just feel lonely or to feel like that boulevard that's so big, you're empty, you're nothing in that.
Yeah, I think it's just a reminder. Part of the solution would be this reminder, give and take. Everything is interdependent. Even if you're alone and you're a loner and you live in under the grid, what do you call off the grid? You're relying on nature to feed you, even though you're taking that action. So yeah, this is really great. We'll just continue. Let's continue with song 2, and then maybe we'll wrap up all 3. But that's very interesting. So song 2 is gonna be on All by Myself with Celine Dion. Basically, it's about loneliness, but I think in the context, it's about when you're younger, you feel like you don't need maybe others or as much because you're so busy. And then as you get older, you realize we do need each other indeed. The only thing that comes to mind is that we could, if somebody told me, you could keep yourself busy. I think it's the idea of being busy is great, but don't, realize you are connected with everything, or connected with the other thing. Uh, Eventually, even if you're that person who's the go-getter and do everything, you're the one that makes things happen. Life is still interdependent. I think this video is going to have interdependent, or the solution is to remember everything is interdependent. Am I saying it right?
Yeah.
Okay. So the 3 cards that came up that maybe will give you some insight, Angela, is the 8 of Pentacles. Let me show you the other one. The World. And the Justice card. So I'm getting told that to show you the world. That might give you some inspiration about solution to loneliness in regard to song All by Myself.
Yeah, what comes to me is the different generations and what we're inheriting from I always use the term ancestors, but it can even be more recent, like recent generations that we know about. Our concept of age, because that song from Celine is when you're young and then you're old. So there's been what they call the generation gap. But what is that generation gap? it's when we're actually saying this generation has one sense of who we are as a planet, and then you have to make the leap into the next generation. So there's that step in between where you're not sure how you're going to get from one to the next. And the justice card it brings me back to what you were saying about give and take. What you are going to put in is what you're going to receive. But when we're a young person, we don't understand that. We only understand that when we become old. You can study history, you can listen to your parents, you can go to school and get all the knowledge. But the gap from knowledge to experience, that actually starts when you begin to interact. So 8, that Pentacles is interaction with your own. You're studying, you're researching, but you're living. So, the University of Life, you can't replace that. And it's only when you get old that you start to embody some of the information. The interesting thing is that the next generation, I got this from Matthias De Stefano, but he always says, like, our generation is dying. And how do we look at that death as just a part of life? It's not a bad thing. It's just part of the cycle. That's the world card too, like understanding the cycles of how the planet's moving, not going, oh my God, I'm going to die and I don't want to be all by myself. But that's actually an empowering place. And the thing that Matthias was saying, that the next generation are the focus. We are, when you're old, you have to face that thing that you are dying and you're not really important anymore. But that's still a very valuable lesson and a phase to move through, to dream about the future, to like, I'm thinking of that justice card. It's like when you're old, you could have redone your childhood, but that's not what it's supposed to do. You're supposed to think about, how can I make that transition for the next generation better? Or what can I do with this wisdom now for either your transition to the next realms? And the card I got was the action card. So this is what you were saying about the interdependence, like being aware that we have to give, we have to do something. But the gap here, the leap that the person's taking, you don't know. When you're facing your older life, you don't know what's coming next either. When you were young, you didn't know what was coming next. So you just have to experience the gap and do something.
Speaking of the gap, what comes to mind is what you said is accurate. However, now we're living longer. So what intuitively I got is we are living longer. So now we're like balancing the scale along with the new generation. So part of that loneliness solution is not going, okay, giving the reality check to the older people. All right, you're supposed to like do something in order to fill in the gap for the younger. And also for the younger, be like, it's a give and take. Yeah, you may think you know everything, but you don't. You know a lot. You need wisdom from all sources, including people before you. And also, now I'm getting told in this energy part, we are living longer. A lot of the older people are living longer. So we're going to be with the younger generation more. So how that's going to work, we have to realize, again, this whole video is going to be about how interdependent works. So what I'm getting shown is, I don't know who that is, but basically, how do you get coffee? Well, coffee comes from a tree, right? So it needs the sun, it needs the water. I don't know what came before that, but somebody maybe planted the root. You needed the farmers for that. And then once it grows, you need the farmers, right? And then the farmers give it to the people who are going to market it, the marketing, and then they deliver it. And then you go to the store and then you
Packaging,
buy
yeah.
it. So that's how independent is. Like my friend take the bus. So she needs the bus driver to go from one place to another. So
Yeah.
even like that loner who's like living off the grid that I mentioned earlier, and they could pretty much rely on, you know, nature, fish, whatever food, drink, they could live their life. But without nature, they wouldn't live. So that's how interdependent we are, even as a loner, right? We need
Yeah.
air. Everybody needs air. So that's why it's important to how we treat our environment. Angela and I did a video a while ago. Um, I can't breathe to I could breathe. Huh. That's a reminder we've been getting, but are we getting it? Are we understanding it? I'll put the video somewhere up here or in the description. And so let's go with song number 3. So song number 3 is by Trey Songz. It's unreleased, but he had a song called Lonely. And it's a love song. A lot of song about loneliness, when I looked it up on YouTube, it's about a love song, you know? So I said I wanted to mix it up. So that's why I picked Boulevard, Broken Dreams. Not necessarily about love. It could be, but it's more about self. All by Myself is similar to that. So now we're going to pick a love song. Basically, it's about a man who has eyes on a woman. And no matter what he does, no matter how many women he has or how busy he is or how many business he takes, there's just nobody like her. But he just can't change. What he said, I tried to change, and you love me regardless, unconditionally, no matter what. And I find myself lonely in my bed. So I could see that in many different scenarios. It doesn't have to be like in that particular scenario, but in love, like how much, whether it's love or anything, how much we try to change. You know how many spiritual courses I take to try to change from spirituality to self-help, and I still find myself in the same situation. And what makes a change? Well, there's a lot of scenarios, but one of it is sometimes you need divine intervention. Angela, I do a program where it's all about that. And he said, don't feel bad about how you are. You just can't help it. You're part of the programming. It's in your condition. It could be from your past life. It could be in your DNA, from your ancestors. It could be like how your brain functions. That's psychological, right? Basic science. There's so many reasons why somebody can't change. It could be astrological. So this is interesting because he wanted to change, but he
Mm.
a lot of us want to change. So this is all related to loneliness. What is the solution? From listening to the past 2 conversation, I have to remember maybe to connect with others more, to see how everything is interdependent. I'm stuck in my
Yeah.
head like the field of dream in my emotion and my feelings. So what comes to your mind when you hear that? I'm going to shuffle the cards
That
in me.
was awesome, Silvia. That's what comes to me, what you were
Right?
sharing, the helplessness.
Helplessness. Yes.
And I feel like just sharing how you are with your own life and looking at it like, I can't change. And we went through all of that personal growth stuff from the 80s, 70s, even from the 60s. I had inherited that from my teachers and the 90s. And it was all like, you can manifest whatever you want. And it's like, no, there's this loneliness when you feel like when you're trying and you're not getting the results, you feel that loneliness and emptiness and helplessness. And that's the time, well, in our experience with our teachers from India, that helplessness is when the grace comes in. And so many teachers have spoken about grace, but I feel like one of the things that comes to me is that the Western teachings about grace tend to be archetypal, like very sort of, I'm not sure what the word is, traditional, and people don't relate to it. So then I'm going to say this again because I said it before, but they drop to that feeling of loneliness because they don't actually know what it's like to feel helpless. So they think they're lonely, but they're actually feeling helpless. And what we did traditionally in other times in Western culture, we would pray. And that's not cool anymore. It's not cool to pray. So I got this card.
And what the wind mean?
This is the meditation card and talking to the divine.
Funny.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because helplessness was always in, if you look at the history of humans, helplessness was an important state for people to let go of their ego, let go of their sort of controlling mind, and they would surrender to their higher self. And now we think that that's kind of goofy in the West. Like we think people who pray are a bit hokey, but we do like meditation. So this is the higher mind, this card, and it's surrendering to, like in transcendental meditation, they talk about the thoughts like an ocean, and you go beneath the ocean. Well, this is the air card or wind, and these are based on Native American uh, teachings. So it's really about surrendering to that gentle part of your mind that can take you to what's beyond the helplessness. It's not you anymore. If you surrender, you can actually find another part of yourself. And people are terrified, I think, of helplessness. That's my main.
It's funny, like you said, we're really forgetting about the idea of praying, that pure energy.
Sure.
That's why intuition, you had to work on your intuition. Everybody had the, that's the real source. And what happened is that control, we're just getting confused, like the Seven of Cups. And I'll share, I did a video on where I worked with this organization for 10 years. And I'm like, nothing's happening. No matter what I do, nothing's happening. And we prayed to this high consciousness being in the Golden Age movement called Sri Yama Bhagavan and the Great Compassionate Light. And I said, I was frustrated. And I said, if you don't do something, and I love them. So for me to say this, but I felt to say this, I'm going to leave. And in my head, I'm like, how am I going to leave? I'm not going to really leave them, but I'm really going to leave them. But I trust myself enough from doing this work, like something's going to happen, whether I just leave and it's good or not. Well, from then on, I had miracles. So I think I must have still been trying control or something without realizing it. I was
Yeah.
really truly in a helpless state, and they showed me that, and now they're showing me miracles. So many layers of control.
Yeah.
Even if divine trying to give me something, I'm still trying to control it some way.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you talked about that. And that's probably why there's more loneliness. We got so many resources now. We have 8 billion people. We got the internet, and people still feeling loneliness, you know? So it's just going back and forth. I'm going to show you these cards so you could tell me what you see. Again, we're getting this card of the Tower, maybe going back to that void. And people escaping, it seems like. They're not really
Yeah.
connected. So what do you think the solution would be? I mean, going back to interdependent and helplessness, about loneliness.
I mean, I don't mean to be mundane, but pray. Like, just what you were sharing was so powerful. I can't take this. I'm going to leave. You have to help me now. It's almost like the arrogance of our culture. We need to just get on our knees and say, I can't do this, help. And help will come. And don't expect it. Just be authentic. I think there's an arrogance in our civilization where it's like, I'm entitled to God doing what I want. But we have to get to that point where we just talk to our own inner higher self, our own desire for connection, and say, I really want it. I can share a strategy from the 90s when I was I had depression. I was 19 or something like that. So lonely at university, so desperate for friends, and I hated myself. And I wrote this desperate call for help in my journal. And I said, I'm going to find people. I'm going to find people. I'm going to meet people. I want this. I want this. I want this. I want this. And I was saying it with such desperateness. And we also know that when you're desperate, the prayers aren't working.
Right.
That could be another level of control.
Mm.
But I just said, I want it. I want it. And then I would go out. I would sit in the cafe back in the time when people used to sit in cafes without phones and just hope that something would happen. And it did. Someone came up to me and we started a conversation. And I was a goth back then. I had large black eye makeup, and I was people were scared of me, and I was terrified of them. They didn't know. They were terrified of me, and I was really like, no idea. I thought, no, I'm just terrified. You don't understand. But someone came up to me, conversation struck up, and that changed my whole life. So the solution is just, you've got to go through that helpless phase and ask. Got to pray and say, I want this. Just like you told us, Silvia, just that was powerful for me. It's like, I'm going to leave. I can't do this. And you weren't trying to be delicate about your language.
I feel like there's more energy about the opposite of loneliness will come about, is coming about. You know, it may seem like it's more gap in between, but I feel like we're getting reminded through a lot of things that are happening, the not so great to the great. We, we are getting the help from something higher than us, whether it's divine energy, whether it's if there's universal friends that are helping us, whether it's just you guys listening and your energy and your wisdom may help others with. So thank you. This was very interesting. I like that we added the music to this.
Thanks, Silvia.
That was cool.